Welcome back to Merseyside Publishing, guys. So today I wanted to look at a model band 9 answer for writing task 2. And I want to show you guys how you can adapt your responses for writing task 2 to achieve the really high bands, because to achieve a band 9, you're really going to make sure that you have all areas that your examiners are looking for nailed, basically. And so to begin, I'm going to just walk through a band 9 response that I've written and show you kind of tips that I've used and different ways of answering the question that you can apply to your own work. So to begin with, obviously, I think you need to be aware of the marking criteria. So task achievement, do you answer the question well? Do you answer it fully? Do you answer all facets of the question that it's asking you? Coherence and cohesion, how well does your essay flow? So are you using linking phrases? Do you have a clear introduction, supporting paragraph 1, 2, and then your conclusion? Lexical resource and grammatical range and accuracy. So, are using a range of vocabulary, a range of grammatical structures, and how accurate is it? So obviously, if you want to achieve band 9, you have to be very accurate. You can't make many mistakes. But, band 9 is, I think, what we should all be aiming for. And if we get an 8.5 or an 8, I'm sure we'd be really happy with that as well. So to begin with now, here's the question I want to look at today. So some people think that a sense of competition in children should be encouraged. So it's clear that there's a group here. So some people think competition in children should be encouraged. Okay. And then the next group is others believe that children who are taught to cooperate rather than compete become more useful adults. And then the question is, discuss both these views and then give your own opinion. So something people do wrong quite a lot is they don't discuss both these views. And if we come back to task achievement, do you answer the question? If you don't discuss both views, you can't achieve, higher than band 6 or 7, unless you've got amazing English. Even then, I don't think you'd be able to score the really high bands. So what we have to do here is pin the question down. And by that, I mean, the question's very wordy. We have all these words. What is it really asking us? Well, it's quite clear. It's asking us to, discuss teaching kids to be competitive versus teaching them to cooperate. So what I'm going to do here is make a little table, and I'm just going to call this one comp. Just going to make it up really quickly. You want to spend, I would say, 2 to 5 minutes at the start of your exam, kind of, planning your ideas, planning what you're going to talk about. So 2 tables. Here is the competitive column, and here's the cooperative. And in general, when you're doing a balanced essay like this for writing task 2, you're going to want to give 2 points for each. So 2 points for each. And then one of the points we're going to want to explain in more detail. And then the second one, we can kind of just mention. So in terms of competitiveness, I could say, it prepares you for jobs. Teaching kids to be competitive prepares them well for jobs and, future life, basically, where, we'll have to compete in the job market and stuff like this. And also, I think friendly rivalries. So I'm just going to put this in really shorthand for us. So friendly rivalries, if you have a friendly rivalry with someone, I think it can make you perform even better because you're competitive with them and you want to do better than them. And so in terms of cooperativeness, we can say maybe team skills. Obviously, you guys will be writing with a pen, so you'll be a lot faster than me with this. But we can say team skills, and we can also say cooperativeness could kind of increase your trust. You have to trust your teammates and be open with them. So I think it can give you definite benefits. So it's clear here that there's kind of both of these ways of teaching children can be really good. But like I said, pick 2 for each, and then explain one in more detail. So I'm going to say maybe prepares you for jobs. I could talk more about that. So I'm going to give this a little plus sign, and that to me just means, okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to give some more information to this later on. And for these examples down here, I can be quite short, just add it on basically. And then give my opinion. I can do that at the very end of the essay in my conclusion. So onto our introduction. Now, always begin by rephrasing the question. So if our question is basically this debate between, competitiveness and cooperativeness, there's a clear debate here, cooperativeness versus competitiveness. So I've kind of summarized this debate in my own words, and I've said how we raise our children is very subjective. It's left up to choice, opinion, and every parent undoubtedly, nice adverb there, has their own methods, semicolon. So quite high level skill already in my first sentence. So some choose to encourage competitiveness, while others emphasize cooperation with the age-old adage. Adage is basically kind of like a Chinese proverb, something that people say all the time. So there is no I in team. So in England, we say that meaning to not be selfish, basically. There's no letter I in TEAM. And it basically means, put the team first. You're not the only person in the team. And we can kind of reference this with quotation marks. And in this first little section here, I've quite clearly summarized the debate and added some new interesting words. That's clearly, lexical resource here, undoubtedly. Interesting way to kind of structure the sentence. So we've got kind of, grammatical range and accuracy with, semicolon. And then I've said here, however, which method is best is very much left open for interpretation. So here, I think, I've used a linking word. This counts as CC, or coherence and cohesion. So, how well does your essay flow? Do you have linking words and different words to kind of let your essay flow? So I've said, however, which method is left open for interpretation. So, I've set up my argument here. I've rephrased the question in my first sentence, and then I've kind of summarized what we're going to argue about in the essay. And my main argument is that, it's up for interpretation. There's no one right way of teaching your kids. It's just, depends on your kind of personal, parental philosophy. So now on to supporting paragraph 1. And yeah, guys, keep it introduction, supporting paragraph 1. I'm going to talk about competitiveness here. After this paragraph, we're going to talk about cooperativeness. So there's a clear structure here, and this is going to let us score really highly for coherence and cohesion, because there's a clear structure. And then my conclusion, I'm going to give my own opinion. So if we come back to the question, I will have discussed both the views, and I will have given my own opinion as well. So I will have answered all areas of the question. So to begin with, I've said, to argue the case for encouraging competitiveness in children. So this is a really good phrase that I think you guys could use in your own essays for sure. So to argue the case for. And yeah, that basically means to back up, to argue this one way. I could say this. And it's a nice way of kind of setting yourself up for your argument and for your future points. So I've said, we might suggest, again, this is a really good phrase. We've used a modal verb here, might. That I think would come under lexical resource. So, I've said we might as well. Quite kind of good. I've used this kind of we construction. I've involved my reader in what I'm writing. So I've said, and that's quite academic. That's kind of what, professional research papers will do. They've said, we might suggest that this parental philosophy, again, I've used quite a lexically complex word there. So this argument between competitiveness and cooperation, I've shortened it to parental philosophy. And showing that you have a range of vocab, I think, really improves your grade, because don't use the same phrases over and over. Use a range, don't use the same word again and again. Use a synonym, use a different word for it, and that will improve your LR, or lexical resource. So intends to make the child as motivated as possible so that they can achieve their goals. So yeah, competitiveness encourages children, motivates them. Do you want to be better than Sam in your class? Sam always wins every race. Don't you want to beat him? That kind of discourse, I think, can be quite helpful for kids, because, it can make them want to work really hard to, be better than the other kids. And obviously working hard is a positive thing for kids, positive value to give your kids. And so I've clearly kind of gone into some detail here with this answer. And I've said, this would naturally stand the child in good stead. Quite a good phrase to use here, in good stead. Just means, would prepare them well for later life, stand them in good stead. Quite idiomatic, really. I think quite a native way of saying it. And guys, when you're learning English, you always want to come across like a native, come across fluent, convince people, trick people you've been living in England your whole life and you know English really well. This is a good phrase to use. As ultimately, we must all compete for university places or in the job market, for instance. So here is my first point, really. I've gone into lots of detail on my first point. So, I've really backed it up. And then for my second point here, I've just said, furthermore, so that's a linking word that plays in with CC, coherence and cohesion, linking my ideas well. Any examiner looking at this can see, okay, there's their next point. They've said furthermore, so clearly this is where their next point is. And then they'll give you a little tick in the column and keep on reading, okay? So furthermore, friendly rivalries between children can elevate both parties to new heights. So a lot of people think you shouldn't use phrasal verbs because they're informal, but this is just not true. Use phrasal verbs in your writing because they really show that you have an idiomatic grasp of English. You really understand lots of different ways to construct things, ways of saying things. So this idea of elevating to new heights, it's this idea of kind of raising something up, making it better, going up the league table kind of thing, elevating both parties to new heights. So party here kind of means both groups. So whereas it can mean, a gathering of people, it can also just mean two groups. So if I said friendly rivalries between two children, each child would be a party. And yeah, rivalries can make both the children better as they attempt to best each other. So this point here, I've not gone in more detail about it. I've just said it, okay? And that's fine. So 1 point, go into detail. 1 point, just mention, Don't need to go into more detail. Only write 2 points as well. You don't want to write 3 or 4. You're just wasting your time. Write 2 for each. Keep to a clear structure. And this way, you'll ensure that you can discuss both, okay? Both these views. So don't just write loads of points on one and then run out of time, for halfway through the essay. Keep a balance to your argument. So I would say I've quite confidently dealt with competitiveness there. And now we can move into the other aspects of the question, cooperativeness. So, however, again, I've shown my examiner the coherence, the cohesion. It's clear that this however word now indicates that I'm going to look at the flip side, if you like, the other way of thinking. So now I'm going to talk about cooperativeness. And for you guys, you can easily take some of these phrases, okay? So this essay has scored a band 9. So, if you take some of these phrases for your own work, that would be really, really helpful. So, however, we must not understand the importance of cooperativeness, understate. So that basically means, we shouldn't undervalue cooperativeness as well. We need to say cooperativeness is important too. So, you could take this phrase here and just replace cooperativeness with something else, whatever your essay might be about, okay? You could just replace it with that. So anyway, I've wrote on competitiveness, especially between children, can often boil over. So again, we've used a phrasal verb. So boiling over basically means can kind of explode, erupt, because in England, we drink a lot of tea. So this idea of, your tea boiling over, everything's ruined, it's chaos, This phrase is quite idiomatic, boil over. So I'm saying people's emotions sometimes can boil over, and definitely try use phrasal verbs because these really will be what separates a band 7, a band 8 from a band 9. You have to really smash all areas of the exam to achieve a band 9. And so if you're using phrasal verbs, quite a high level skill, you'll find it really, really helps you. So yeah, boil over basically means kind of to explode, kind of like, if your emotions boil over, it could result in fighting, misbehavior, things we don't want. And so I'm saying there is a kind of a bad side to competitiveness. We shouldn't just only encourage our kids to be competitiveness. We also need to teach them how to cooperate. So again, I've said on the other hand, used a linking word, CC there. More overtly encourages pro-social behaviors. Quite a good phrase there for you guys. Pro-social behaviors basically means encouraging people to be sociable, okay? But we're saying it in a very academic, wordy, band 9 kind of way, and prompts children to work together in a team. Okay, so as with competitiveness, having a strong ethic of teamwork will undeniably help when it comes to the real world of jobs. Additionally, cooperativeness encourages openness and trust because playing team sports, for example, means that you must learn to rely on others as well as yourself. So again, I've added a little bit more information here additionally, and then we've said this next little point I have here. So our main point we've dealt with here, and then our second point we've dealt with here. And in terms of our conclusion, okay, I'm just making sure you guys can all see this properly. There we go. Right. Okay, perfect. So in terms of our conclusion, we've set it up again. We've said, in conclusion, This again, CC, linking word, it's telling our examiner that this is our conclusion. It's telling him, making him aware of our structure. So I would say that I, in part, disagree with the suggestion that children taught to cooperate become more useful adults than those taught to compete. So if we return to the question here, discuss both these views and give your own opinion. In your conclusion, you can really, really kind of interrogate the question, really decisively answer the question. I've discussed both these views now in paragraph 1 and 2, and now it's time to really give my own opinion about them. It says here, others believe that children who are taught to cooperate rather than compete become more useful adults. I would really disagree with that. I don't think just because you're taught to cooperate means that you will become a more useful adult. I think you should be taught to compete and cooperate. They both can be helpful things for kids. So that's what I've said in my conclusion. I've really, really, in your conclusion, don't repeat yourself, don't repeat your argument, but kind of narrow it down. So give your opinion, hammer home the point, is something we say in English, hammering home a point, really focusing and reinforcing your argument without repeating yourself. There's definitely a bit of a skill to it, a bit of an art to it, but if you just practice essays again and again, you can get the hang of that. So children taught to cooperate become more useful than adults. So I've kind of, inverted commas over what the question was saying. And inverted commas kind of show that you're questioning it. So if I'm saying, stuff is more useful, I'm kind of saying that the question is wrong in a way, and that I think it's kind of a dumb question. And, your examiners will love this because it's showing that you've engaged with the task, you've formed your own opinions, and you can argue your own clear, decisive opinions. So when taught properly, both these traits are valuable for growing children because they are qualities that we rely on in later life. So again, I've very deliberately not repeated myself here. So when I was writing this, I wrote traits again because traits and qualities both kind of mean the same thing. So I wrote this sentence out as both these traits are valuable for growing children because they are traits that we will rely on in later life. But, this would be band 7, okay? If you can add some more vocabulary in, so qualities means the same thing as traits. So if you can add these synonyms in and not repeat the word, that will mean you score really highly on lexical resource, and that will bump your grade up, of course. So, of course, kind of an opinion kind of phrase here, sometimes quite good to use because, keeps the flow to your argument. You're saying, of course, we think this and this. And I think that kind of draws your reader in a little bit as well. So competitiveness can sometimes lead to negative consequences, such as fighting. And so it is important to distinguish between this and healthy competition. So, I've added some more information there. I've said competitiveness and cooperativeness are both important, and we shouldn't just focus on one over the other. But, competitiveness can sometimes lead to bad things like fighting. And I think that's maybe what the question was getting at. That's what the question was trying to say by saying people become more useful adults if they're taught to cooperate. But I've clearly engaged with the question here, and keep your conclusion short and concise. It doesn't have to be really long. Sometimes your conclusion might only be 1 or 2 sentences. But in general, I think if you use all these kinds of strategies, these sentence structures, complex sentence here, we've got grammatical range and accuracy there. That's a complex sentence. I'm using a range of vocabulary. I'm not repeating the same words. I'm using interesting kinds of sentences semicolons, inverted commas, linking words, so key, guys. Every essay you write, you need to structure them with linking words, to argue the case for, or you could say, firstly, however, for your second paragraph, and then in conclusion, okay? Rephrasing your introduction, set your argument up well, and there's really no reason why you guys can't achieve the really high bands, because if you're aware of all these different things that your examiner is looking for, then you'll be able to tailor your responses to exactly what they want. And so, you'll be able to at least achieve band 7, okay? Obviously aim for band 9, and then, if you get band 7, band 7.5, that's more than fine. But yeah, guys, we've got more videos coming up on writing and how to pass your writing exam. So if you have any more questions, please let us know. And we'll be doing many more videos on these in the coming days and weeks. But thank you guys all for watching. And if you want to send me your writing task response to correct it for you, I'm more than willing to do that. And thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you